Coming up on TekThing, new GPUs from AMD. Do they have the fastest GPU ever? Pi-Hole versus OpenDNS. Windows security, you better update. Logitech's G413 silver gaming keyboard and more. All coming up on TekThing. Thank you, patrons. Without your support via patreon.com/TekThing, we wouldn't be able to make the show for you each and every week. Join the crew that makes TekThing possible at patreon.com/TekThing.
I'm Shannon Morse.
And I'm Patrick Norton.
And this is TekThing, where we have something useful on every single show.
We're going to talk about Pi-Holes and OpenDNS.
Yay!
And you're a gamer.
I am a gamer.
Have you thought about getting a faster GPU?
You know, I have considered it, especially with all the new fancy stuff that's been coming out this year.
Speaking of new fancy stuff, Mr. Ryan Shrout from PCPer is going to join us right now to talk about AMD's new RX 500 series of GPUs. AMD's new Radeon RX 500 series of GPUs launched this week, and as we always like to ask, is this the fastest GPU ever? Answering that question from PCPer.com, our favorite PC benchmarking maven, Mr. Ryan Shrout. Ryan, welcome back, man.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. So a couple weeks ago, Nvidia releases the Titan XP with a fully unlocked GP102, first for consumers, fastest GPU ever, but it's a $1,200 part from Nvidia's website.
Yeah, a little bit on the high side for most consumers, I would bet.
You know, this week, the Radeon RX 500 series, is this a challenge for the fastest card ever?
In no way or fashion is it that. No, it is very much an iterative product release. Despite the fact that we've gone from 400 series to 500 series naming schemes, these are, you know, the term gets used in a derogatory manner,
right,
but the term rebranding applies here to a large degree, yes.
So, you know, we're not using Vega parts. This is essentially Polaris 2.0, the 480 architecture, higher speeds, higher voltages, which delivers more performance, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what they've done is they have given the board vendors, MSI, Asus, Sapphire, those guys, more headroom on the power side to increase clock speeds. If you look at just the reference specs, you're only seeing like an 80 megahertz increase from the boost clock, kind of max clock on the RX 480 up to the RX 580. So 80 megahertz is not really going to net you anything super dramatic. You're looking at a 5 to 7% kind of difference there.
So what happens when the vendors get a hold of these parts and starts overclocking them in a serious way? Do we get something over 10%?
It really depends. Like if you compare it to the original reference design of the RX 480, you might be able to get somewhere near 10%. But what we did in my testing and our review, what we looked at was they sent us a pre-overclocked RX 580 from MSI. We had a pre-overclocked RX 480 from Asus, and we had a pre-overclocked EVGA GTX 1060 6 gig card from EVGA. And we kind of compared them that way. These are mostly modest overclocks out of the box, but I will say, you know, in a similar way to what the Ryzen processors did in order to compete with Intel, where there wasn't a whole lot of overclocking headroom on those CPUs, especially at the high end, because they were getting as much out of the box as they could to compete with Intel. I think they're doing the same thing here with the RX 580. They're kind of pushing them close to the edge as it is, in order to stay competitive with the GTX 1060. So, you know, overclocking wise on my MSI card, I could maybe get another 3.5% clock speed increase out of it, but not much more than that. And that's with a lot of power headroom involved.
So when we look at these boards, we're thinking, you know, probably R380 series, not 400 series. If you're looking for FreeSync, HDR, higher refresh rates on your HDMI output, 4K encode and decode support.
Yeah, this is, you know, and I'll give credit to AMD because they started the conversation with us about this. It's like, hey, look, if you have a 400 series card, you don't need to worry about buying a 500. This is not that upgrade path. It's if you have an R9 380, 380X or older graphics card, which I think they claim there's 500 million graphics cards or 500 million PC gamers out there using at performance levels of a 380X or below. Yeah. Like that's really their target.
Steam says 500 million gamers are using graphics card 2 years or older.
Which is kind of insane, right? But, you know, it's essentially they're targeting the 580 against the same person they were targeting the 480. They've just slightly increased the 580. So if you look at it from a positive point of view, it is, well, they didn't devalue my 480 at all or change the stance of anything. They just made it slightly faster. They gave it a new number. It is now AMD's best mainstream GPU product on the market.
So this is a 1060 competitor. You know, the 580 is priced at $229 for an 8 GB model, $199 for 4 GB. You know, how does it compare to the 1060?
It's in my testing, it's just slightly below it still. All three of the cards that we looked at, the 580, the 480, and the 1060, were at $249 MSRP, and I think, you know, because it wasn't out yet, we were just basing it on the resellers pricing or the vendors pricing to us. But like the EVGA card we bought was actually literally selling at $249. So the comparisons are very valid because of that. The 1060 was faster in 4 out of the 6 games we tested, and in all 8 of those resolutions that we tested 2 resolutions per game. In one case, GTA 5, it was a high difference. The Nvidia card was 18% faster, but in general, it was more of a 8 to 10% difference. And then there was 1 or 2 cases where the AMD card was actually a little bit ahead. So they're close. They're it's not an accident. These guys designed these products specifically for this purpose.
Right.
It's a strong competitor. It's if I were picking one, I would probably go with the 1060 6K because it's using much less power, about 80 watts less power from the wall than the RX 580, and getting slightly better performance at the same time.
Should anybody be looking at the 4 GB version of this card, or go head straight to the 8 GB if you're going to buy a 580?
At the 580, I think 8 gigs is what you got to look at. If you look at something like the RX 570, which is maybe a little bit better of a story because it fits in between the GTX 1060 3 gig at the high end and the GTX 1050 Ti, and it can make a more compelling kind of a value proposition. And those 4 gig models are probably going to be the best solution there. You mentioned power consumption on this. You guys did some crazy power consumption testing. The overclocked version of these cards can suck down up to 225 watts. Yeah, the peak limit with the hardware configuration is 225 watts, and the MSI card that we were running ran over 205, 210 watts at peak, which is quite a bit higher than the RX 480. When it launched, it had a TDP of 150. So in reality, what AMD has done is kind of opened it up and said, okay, board vendors, use as much power as you want. We're not going to make any claims about this being a super efficient GPU. Just get as much performance as you can for that price point, and that's what they'll focus on.
What about Radeon Chill? Is that doing anything to really bring down the power consumption on these cards?
It can in very specific games and use cases. Radeon Chill essentially allows the card to run at lower clock speeds and the frame rate to run at lower speeds when you're not moving or when action isn't occurring on the screen, which happens more often than you might think. But it is a whitelist feature, meaning the games have to be tested and evaluated for it beforehand, so you don't always get that advantage. Honestly, we need to spend more time with it to see how it may or may not affect the user experience. AMD claims it doesn't affect it at all. Other people seem to have varying opinions on the matter.
Makes sense. So we've seen the 1080 Ti bump the 1080 down in price and performance. Are there more high-end Vega boards coming from AMD?
There are. That's what we're told. We haven't seen any Vega products yet. I would expect that to be a June, July kind of time frame. At least that's the most recent information we have, and that's where we expect to see the competitors to like the GTX 1080s and 1070s of the world. And trust me, we're really eager to see them.
PCPer.com is the website, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ryan Shrout is the man you've been listening to speak. Anything you can tease that's coming up on the website, sir?
We do have some more 1080 Ti cards to look at, as well as our review of the RX 570 going up against its Nvidia competitors as well. We hope to get that done this week.
Ryan, thank you so much for making the time for TekThing.
Absolutely.
We got an email from Sunny. Hi, Sunny. She writes, I was wondering if you could look into an open source product called Pi-Hole. It's designed to block unwanted ads from coming into your home internet router connection when configured as your primary DNS. I currently use OpenDNS and am a very happy customer of it, but wanted to see if you could possibly do a comparison of the two products and highlight pros and cons of each. Keep up the great work. I love the show. Your Patreon, Sunny. Thank you so much, Sunny. And yes, that is a great question, and it's something that I've been interested in for like ever. So the biggest difference between OpenDNS and the Pi-Hole is that the Pi-Hole is all about blocking those advertisements all over the web whenever you're browsing, so it blocks all the things. While OpenDNS is about blocking categories of content, and it doesn't necessarily do the ad blocking like Pi-Hole does. So I want to get everybody up to speed with this. OpenDNS Not necessarily open source. It is a DNS service that extends DNS with stuff like content filtering, phishing protection.
Right.
That's a really big one for them. It's been around for like 10 years, I think.
Over 10 years
since
now,
I was a child, but it was bought by Cisco a couple of years ago. So now it's a for-profit company, basically.
Well, it's pretty much always been a for-profit company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally been playing around with OpenDNS since it launched.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, right? A lot of people are like, I have OpenDNS, my children will never see pornography. And it's like, well, it depends on how technically sophisticated your children are, or if they just log into your neighbor's Wi-Fi. True story. So there's 3 basic options for OpenDNS, right? The free version, the consumer version. And we're not going to go into the sort of like commercial offerings they have. But there's OpenDNS Family Shield, OpenDNS Home, and VIP Home.
Okay.
So OpenDNS claims that all of them will offer faster and more reliable home internet, but faster really depends on what DNS service you're using now and how good it is, right? If your DNS from your cable company is crappy, or if you've picked some really weird DNS server, yes, this might be faster if you have a really well-configured DNS setup, and that's a whole nother conversation. Email ask@TekThing.com if you want to nerd out on that. We'll talk about DNS. But Family Shield is the basic option. It's free. It blocks adult content, and it only requires you to point your router or your devices towards the Family Shield name servers, 208.67.
Seems easy enough.
222.123 and 208.67.222.123.
Okay.
So you use those DNS servers, right, at the router level, for example. When somebody types in www.pornographicwebsite.com, I don't know what that goes to, so do us both a favor. Don't go there, see something horrible, and then email me. But when you go to a naughty website, you get this. Yeah, the OpenDNS page that says this page is blocked due to content filtering. And what's interesting is, as I'm very free speech. I'm very First Amendment. I'm married to a librarian, which is to say that she is even more militant about hating content filtering than I do.
Yes.
The nice thing about OpenDNS is that it's good enough to know the difference between, say, porn websites and searching for breast cancer information, or for contraception.
Right.
But let's say if you go to buy contraceptive devices from a place that OpenDNS's groupthink thinks are like adult toy stores, then those are blocked, right? So, but that's also like filtering software filters what it's been told to filter, and you may or may not agree with that. So that's where kind of the next level of filtering comes in, which is the home free level, right?
Okay.
You sign up for it, and you can choose categories, right? The block domains are voted on, they're added or not added by the OpenDNS community. And when you go into the dashboard, you've got low, protects against pornography. Moderate, protects against all adult-related sites and illegal activity.
Oh, I see.
High, protects against all adult-related sites, illegal activity, social networking sites, video sharing sites, and general time wasters. Well,
general time wasters.
Well, I think that's great, right? Well,
so that's good for work. I wonder if they used that when I worked at a bank, because I couldn't even access Hack5.
Well, I also think of that as being my teenager is basically grounded from all internet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or
just turn that on and they won't be able to do anything.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is there's a custom option, right? Where if you look down to the custom option, you can choose the categories you want to watch.
Oh,
so
that's
like,
nice.
These are the ones that are kind of like the basic ones from
That's
the
what I would
setting,
probably
right?
use.
Tasteless. So,
Tasteless. How do you know?
Oh, you don't.
That's so relative.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. There's some really peculiar things. German youth protection, educational institutions. I don't know why we want to block educational institutions, but it's an option. And then you can actually block. So you can choose by category, or you can block individual domains. For example,
cool.
if you love Chevy and you hate Ford, and you want to keep your teenage gearhead away from Ford, you could block Ford.com, or Subaru.com. Now, that's slightly ridiculous, but you get the idea.
Okay, cool.
That's
too funny.
Yeah, it does require you to have a static IP address or to run their application to deal with, if you have a dynamic IP address assigned from the ISP, there's a little bit of software you want to download on a PC at home. And then there's like VIP Home.
Ooh, VIP.
Yeah, VIP. So VIP Home is $20 a year, and the big difference is that it retains the past year of internet stats on your home network.
Oh.
And then it can, what I consider the nuclear option of DNS filtering, you can lock down internet access to a list of whitelisted domains.
Ah, I see.
Right. So Bobby, you get the school website and the church website until your grades go up.
Got it.
Matter of fact, everyone in the house is just going to get the school website and the church website. So if you are particularly paranoid about the internet and your teenager does not have the sort of unlimited amount of time to develop technical expertise that I associate with teenagers trying to get around filters, this would be an excellent option for you to basically just lock it down to you can have this website and this website.
Okay.
Which also I think happens at a lot of small businesses.
Yes, it does.
You know, so as long as Bobby can't change the DNS setting in the router, you are good to go.
Yeah.
Now, if he goes to his sister, you know, Cheryl, and Cheryl changes the DNS setting in the router, it's going to ruin everything for you. So let's talk about Pi-Hole.
Yay, Pi-Hole!
Pi-Hole has the best open web page. I love the fact.
Oh, it's a great website.
Yeah, Pi-Hole, a black hole for internet advertisements. It's really simple. You install a Linux OS on a Raspberry Pi or your favorite Linux distro on a PC, and then you type in this. I don't know if you can quite read that on your screen.
Oh yes, curl.
Curl.
Yes.
Curl-SSL space https://install.pi-hole.net space pipe space bash, or maybe it's just net pipe
it to bash, yeah.
And then you point your routers.
You're downloading to bash, yeah, that makes sense.
And that automates the entire installation.
Cool.
And then you point your router's DNS at Pi-hole. Doesn't this sound familiar?
It does, yeah.
You can't do OpenDNS and the Pi-hole at the same time. And you are now running the mother of all ad blockers.
Yes.
Something over 100,000 ad-serving domains are blocked. And it does it at the network level, right? Because you point your router to it. You could point your PC to it too, but it does it at if you do it at the network level, then it never gets into your home network.
That's cool.
This is great if you hate ads and you never want to go to websites that require you to whitelist them if you want to view them. For example, if you put on Pi-hole, Forbes.com should give you the classic Forbes.com. You've got an ad blocker turned on, and that sucks because we need ads for revenue, so please whitelist us. Here's the thing, to whitelist stuff, oh, by the way, this is the Pi-hole interface. I just want to point this out. It is a beautiful interface.
Oh, it's a great interface.
Yeah, it's like DNS queries blocked today, DNS queries today, you know, what percentage of the queries were blocked, the number of domains that are being blocked. It's a really beautiful, nice piece of design on the interface there. You can whitelist sites on Pi-hole.
If you want to allow those advertisers?
Well, it's kind of, normally you're like, I want to whitelist, you know, Forbes.com.
Yeah.
But to whitelist something in Pi-hole, you have to whitelist all of the domains that the page uses.
Oh.
So they recommend, for example, using Whitelist Assistant by TekThing, which will tell you all of the lookups that a page is doing. Oh. And then you could go in and manually go into the Pi-hole and clear all of those, which will work great until they add a new tracking pixel or change an ad server, in which case you'll have to go back and do it again.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
That sounds a little complicated, like I'm too lazy to do that.
It is a nuclear option. OpenDNS for content filtering, Pi-hole as the nuclear ad blocking option. OpenDNS is also a great alternative if you have issues with your DNS from your local internet provider, and you would like to have some, you know, phishing protection and maybe block the naughty websites. And if you like naughty websites, you might not want to run OpenDNS unless you go to the, you know,
unless you customize it.
Exactly.
You have to know how to customize it if you want to go to the naughty bits.
Yeah, there you have it. So
there you go.
And of course, OpenDNS knows everything you look at, and for $20 a year, you can track everything that hits OpenDNS. Which just creeps me out. I don't think I want to know what everyone in my family is searching for on the internet.
I probably don't want to either.
So email ask@TekThing.com or tweet @PatrickNorton or
@Snubs
if you want to ask us more questions, because we love your questions.
Got a question? Curious to see us review something? Got a tip or an idea? You can fire them out at ask@TekThing.com, or you can tweet us @TekThing, @Snubs, and @PatrickNorton. And hey, if you want to be a part of the crew that makes this show possible each and every week, please contribute to the show at patreon.com/TekThing. Just $1 will make a huge difference, and you will get access to our patron-only build videos and a ton more. We even include an audio RSS feed now just for our patrons. Thank you so much for your patronage. You make the show possible. Real quick, I wanted to mention, make sure to check us out over on YouTube or patreon.com/TekThing, because I am going to be uploading an extra little short video for everybody.
Your minimalist desk?
It's my ultimate minimalist gaming desktop setup. So I can't wait to show it to you guys. I produced the whole thing. It's super fancy. So yeah, I hope you guys will like it. So that'll be airing on Tuesday once I get it edited and ready. On Tuesday. And speaking of gaming, What's this?
Because we love keyboards.
We do love keyboards.
And we love modestly priced mechanical keyboards even more. Meet Logitech's G413 Silver. This actually reminds me a lot of the HyperX Alloy FPS, right? Because you basically get a keyboard and a bunch of keys and a really solid construction, and it's in a minimal footprint. There's no wrist rest. Cue Shannon groaning. She loves
I love my wrist rest.
You do. But the flip side is it doesn't take up a huge amount of space on your desktop.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
some of the gaming keyboards we've seen are, you know, probably this much bigger.
They're huge.
They are huge.
Some of them are very heavy too.
Yeah, construction is really, really solid. Features an exposed aircraft-grade 5052 aluminum top case in case you need to, you know, fly with it or fly using it. And the switches are top-mounted, easy access on that. If you're wondering what kind of switches it has, I'm glad you asked. These are Logitech's Roamer G keys. They move 1.5 millimeter to actuation. That's almost as short as the keys in Corsair's K70 RGB Rapid Fire, which travel a ridiculously short 1.2 millimeters to actuation. That's the shortest keyboard travel we know of. Total key travel, or I should say keyboard actuation, the total key travel on the G14 is 3 millimeters, and they take 45 grams of force to actuate, which feels delightful under my fingers. Kingston's really big on saying their keystroke signal processing in the G413 is superior to other keyboards, up to 10 milliseconds faster, they say, than a Black Widow Chroma V2.
Really?
So in games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that where they intake keyboard commands at a there's like a tick rate where it's you know, doot, 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 doot.
Yeah.
Kingston says the G413 should get your keystrokes to the servers considerably faster ahead of other players, meaning you will win all the games. And while I definitely enjoyed gaming on the G413, it did not magically turn me into a Counter-Strike killing machine, probably because A, I'm not fast enough, or B, for that matter, I'm not good enough to take advantage of the G413's speed.
Yeah.
They have optional contoured keycaps, right? They, you know, like a lot of the keyboards out there, they have the special gaming keycaps. Unlike a lot of the dedicated gaming keycaps I've seen, these are not, you know, they're just a really subtle contour. Or they, you know, where some of the ones I've seen where they like create a giant, like, look, we made a hand grenade for your fingertips to slide into. There's logic there.
Which can get annoying if you are just typing things out and your finger kind of gets friction-y stuck on the W. That's happened to me.
I can't get to the number 2 anymore. I generally leave those off because I type a lot more than I game, but these actually did not bother me typing. Question for everybody out there, ask at TekThing.com. Do any of you use multiple keyboards? I will put this down now. Or, you know, do you have multiple keyboards plugged in? Do you have a special gaming keyboard that you use just for raging on Steam? I'm curious. Ask at TekThing.com. Gaming aside, as somebody that loves loud mechanical switches, the Roamer G keys, fairly soft, but the short actuation, and they had just a nice feel. They were great for typing.
They are, yeah, I agree with you.
I really, really like that, despite the fact that they were super quiet. Way quieter than the Cherry MX Blue clicky keys I use at home.
Very quiet.
And my wife and the cats appreciate that. 413 is a USB pass-through for data and charging. Logitech designed these cable pathways under the G413 to help with cable management, one for your headset, one to act as sort of a mouse bungee on that one. If you're into that kind of thing, great. I had one mouse that would fit in there, one headset that wouldn't fit in there, so your mileage may vary depending on how thin your cables are, and depending on how much you move your keyboard, you may find you need to tape. Like route it through there and then gaffer's tape it in place. No dedicated volume or mute control, but you can hit function, and the F9 through F12 print screen, scroll lock, pause keys will do everything from pause, play, skip, volume, mute, all that good stuff.
Okay.
The G413 does not do individual key lighting.
No.
No.
You mean I can't do my rainbow of colors with purples and blues and...
No.
Oh.
Matter of fact,
That's okay.
in the Logitech gaming software, you can pretty much change the brightness or turn on a heartbeat pulse, which is probably why it's so affordable.
Okay.
Gaming software also lets you customize keys, set up your game customizations, and now has the open source Overwolf driver overlay app if you want to, say, set up custom lighting or have hardware stats show up in your game interface. What else? Logitech says it is tested for 70 million keystrokes.
Okay.
I have no idea what that translates to in terms of real world use. I mean, do keys get sloppy?
That number's pretty average that I've noticed with a lot of keyboards these days, is 70 million keystrokes.
I always wonder, like, you know, do keyboards get sloppy at 35 million keystrokes? Do they still feel as good at 40 million keystrokes?
I would think at that point they would probably degrade to the point where maybe different keys stop working or something like that.
It is an interesting thought
Yes.
to think about. So, you know, Logitech says they are 40% more durable than the top competitor, but as Shannon pointed out, a lot of the competitors seem to be upping their durability
Yes.
game. We tested the silver, which is silver.
It's silver.
There's also a carbon, aka black version. The silver is only available at Best Buy.
Oh.
Let's see. Excellent typing experience, solid on games, and while I would love a dedicated volume knob or, you know, media buttons at $89.99 MSRP, which hopefully means a lower street price, the G413 seems like a very good gaming keyboard deal to me.
Yes.
Just saying. If you're ever wondering about security and privacy threats that are happening right now, you should check out ThreatWire, Shannon's show on the Hack5 channel, where she delves into the biggest hacks each week.
That's right.
It's update week.
Yes, it is.
As she slams her fists into the table.
There are lots of updates from Microsoft. So TLDR, just make sure to patch your systems. Okay? Okay.
Horrible secret. Middle of our shoot today, Windows decided to update on me.
It always happens at the worst time, but you need to make sure that it gets done.
Yes.
You have to make sure to patch your system. So researchers at this company called FireEye, they found a 0-day in Microsoft Word that lets an attacker gain access and infect your PC. They can do malware, viruses, whatever they want, even if you have macros turned off on the application. So this works all the way up through Windows 10, including your computer, Patrick.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I'm patched.
Luckily, the good thing about this is Microsoft was like, hey, we should fix this, like immediately. So they released a patch last week on Patch Tuesday. They also fixed 2 other 0 days that work in Internet Explorer. So hopefully you're not using Internet Explorer in Office 2013, 2016, and I believe the other one was 2010. And all of these were reportedly being used in the wild already. So hackers have figured out how to use this in the wild to infect machines. So just make sure, do your patch, do it now, and then you should be good.
As frustrating as it is when Windows 10 decides to update in the middle of, say, a TekThing shoot, it is nice to know that in 10 years, when Windows 10 is no longer supported or been deprecated or whatever happens, that all of the zombie Windows 10 machines will still be updating as long as updates are available, unlike, say, a giant collection of Windows XP machines.
This is true. This is true.
Turned into fests of filth and depravity.
The other thing I wanted to mention is you may remember Shadow Brokers, which is this hacking group. They were trying to auction off a bunch of hacking tools that they had reportedly stolen or obtained from the Equation Group. The Equation Group is this cyber hacking unit which has been linked to the NSA. Obviously, the government hasn't come out and said the Equation Group is one of our NSA affiliates, but you know, the link is there. So they did this several months ago. Nobody bought up the hacking tools, so they just kept them to themselves.
Really, who's going to cut a check to piss off the NSA?
I know. I was like, oh, good luck with that anonymity. So while they finally released about 300 megabytes of data, they dubbed this Lost in Translation. They just released it last week, and they included an archive folder titled Windows, another one titled Swift, and another one called Oddjob. So the Windows folder held hacking tools for older Windows computers. So if you're still using something like Windows XP, which I hope you are not, especially if you're watching the show, and Server 2003, Oddjob contained a tool that was ability to use a hacking tool against Server 2003 up to Windows XP professional machines, and the last one contained presentations. So apparently somebody was making presentations to the NSA about the Swift Service Bureau in the Middle East called EastNets. So you'll probably remember Swift if you've seen ThreatWire before. They were hacked late last year, and Swift is what a lot of Middle Eastern banks and a lot of European banks use to transfer money, wire transfer from one bank to another. So they got hacked, and that was a really big deal. Of course, EastNets updated their site, and they were like, no, that never happened to us. It's nothing to worry about, of course.
It's back in 2013.
Old server, doesn't matter. But there's account information there. There's admin account info. So if it is indeed true, it could be proof that the Equation Group, which was linked to the NSA, was targeting Swift banking bureaus in the Middle East. And that's a really big deal. Although it doesn't affect us personally, it still affects us as a whole, because
if you're following the money trail from somewhat legitimate organization
Yeah.
to somewhat vile terrorist organization,
Yeah.
following the big money transfers is one way to do that.
So it still affects people. According to Microsoft, most of those vulnerabilities that the shadow brokers shared with everybody, they've already been patched as well. So again, update those patches, guys. There were a few that they saw. Englishman Dentist was one of them. They always have these funky little code names.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
The Steam audit.
Exploding can. So all of those, they could not reproduce. And Windows 7 and up, they say we're not at risk of those additional ones. Now, the last thing...
Go ahead. No,
do you
I'm
have a
having a
question?
thought, but go ahead.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to mention too is security researchers have also been delving into a bunch of code that shadow brokers released that is oddly similar to Stuxnet. So it's very strange because while Stuxnet was later implemented into a hacking tool called Metasploit, and Metasploit is available for anybody to download off the internet. It's free unless you want like the corporate version. But this code links back to Stuxnet in 2010, and it kind of links NSA because the time that this code was released was before Metasploit implemented it in their software, which is a little strange that the code is almost exactly the same between what shadow brokers released, which is linked to the NSA, and what Stuxnet had way back in 2010.
If you have a million monkeys typing on a million typewriters, one of them's come up with like Shakespeare's Henry V, and apparently one of them is going to come up with the Stuxnet software. And if you have 2 million monkeys, you're going to have 2 Shakespearean Odysseys and 2 Stuxnets.
And of course, again, the government has not confirmed any kind of links or relations to the NSA and Stuxnet, so you know that's up for grabs. But that link with the code being so similar is there. So what you determine to be the truth is up to you. But you know these things come out anytime some hacking group comes out with new tools from government affiliations.
I'm less worried about like this. I'm not less worried about the whole Stuxnet link possibility. As I'm not nearly as worried about that as I am about like however many additional gigabytes of material this crew is sitting on that they have not
haven't released.
Because 300 megabytes, 300 megabytes out of how many megabytes, out of how many gigabytes, out of how many terabytes of tools. It is, you know, Shannon said it 4 times, keep your updates on.
Absolutely.
Because this is going to be an ugly, if it turns out to be that there's several more gigabytes of zero-day flaws.
And there could be. And if they are sitting on them, when they do release them, Microsoft will know, and Microsoft will act on that, and they will update, which is one of the good things, like one of the only good things that comes out of these releases of hacking tools. So if you are interested in learning more about what kind of privacy or security or digital freedom things are happening, not only here in America, but also across different countries as well, especially in Europe and for our Australian friends as well, check out youtube.com/hack5, where I cover all of the news every single week with security, privacy, and internet freedom.
Word. Samsung Galaxy S8.
Yay!
Started showing up Tuesday, the day we recorded this.
Yes.
The crew over at iFixit did a full teardown. Hi, iFixit.
Oh man, I love their teardown so much.
Yes, they have been an advertiser on TekThing. Some reports are that some of the early screens are tinted, that Bixby's pre-installed apps suck.
Nothing new there.
And
the batteries have not exploded
yet. A repairability score of 4 for iFixit. Yeah, that was actually interesting because that was one of the things like a bunch of websites were like, it's a really nice phone. You might want to wait to see if they fix that battery problem, which I thought was harsh, but fair.
Well, none of us know the future, but we do know that Samsung has made a lot of changes to their quality control management for the new batteries and the manufacturing. So if we do see these ones blow up, that'll be a serious, serious concern. But I'm not expecting that to happen, given that they've made so many changes.
I'm laughing because, you know, batteries blowing up, I think, is always a serious, serious concern.
Yeah.
And it's always okay to punch Nazis in the face, and batteries blowing up in your phone is always a serious concern. Completely random note.
Yes.
Before we go, Apple to unveil 3 iPhones this fall, including 2 revamped models and a new high-end model with a curved OLED display.
Nice.
That's the other big thing. So I think the rumor sorting, the Apple rumoring machine has started disseminating rumors.
Yeah.
Which means, actually I'm really curious about the curved OLED iPhone.
I am too.
And will it have a headphone jack? No.
I guess we'll see. Will you pre-order the Apple phone?
Probably not.
No?
It's going to be like $1,000.
Oh yeah.
And it's,
it probably will be.
how much better than the phone I have is it really going to be?
Yeah. Do you need to upgrade? I have Google Fi, so I can't upgrade all the time.
I don't know. I like the new iPad, especially the price. Like the entry-level iPad's like $320 now, which is the cheapest new iPad. So we might finally be upgrading our first generation iPads at home.
Really?
They still run.
Wow.
They still play video.
Hey,
they play
still
all
run,
the games
it's
the
fine.
kids want to play. So, and they're still running and they still have decent battery life.
That's awesome.
Call me cheap, but they still work.
All right, well, that's enough talk about gadgets, I think. Remember, once in a while, put down your phone, step away from your screen, close the laptop, and do something analog, like Peter, who sent in this photo, and he also writes, "Hail TekThingers, this is what I did for something analog. I shoveled snow. Not once, not twice, not thrice, but 6 total times across 2 days.
Ow.
Boy, are my arms, legs, and back tired.
Ow.
No snowblower. We got at least 34 to 40 inches of snow. The piles on each side of the driveway are nearly 6 feet tall. Yes, living in southern New York is not for wimps, nor the faint of heart." Thank you so much, Peter. That was awesome.
I like being able to drive the snow when I want to.
I miss Alaska and living in 4 feet of snow. Those were good times.
Good times.
Yeah, but I was a kid, so I didn't have to do the shoveling.
I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Shannon Morse.
We'll see you next week on TekThing. First new iPad.
First new iPad. I have an original iPad Air that I just use for like recipes and FaceTime, and that's about it. Recipes. Thank you everybody for helping us support this show. I guess support their show.
Thank you for supporting the show via patreon.com/TekThing. And thank all of you for watching, even if you don't contribute.
Yes, thank you.
Because we can't do it without you and your emails. ask@TekThing.com, at Patrick Norton,
at Snubs,
or at TekThing.
Sorry, I'm done.